Welcome to the first episode of North Carolina First. My name is Brandon. If you're watching this video, it's because you're interested to know more about the Senate race for North Carolina 2026. There's been some changes that have kind of been, I won't say turbulent, but just a lot of changes, even in the last, say, 30 days or so. Right now, it seems that there's really three people who have their hats, or rather their name in the hat, and that's Cooper, Whatley, and Brown. So we'll take just a quick look at those. If you're here watching on YouTube or Twitter, definitely subscribe, like the video, drop a comment. Who are you supporting? Are you supporting anybody? Without any further ado, let's get into it. First, we're going to get into Roy Cooper here. And he's basically the only guy the Democrats have out right now. And he does have a lot of financial backing behind him. 24 hours within him announcing he was running for Senate, he raised $3.4 million. He says supposedly that most of that is small donations. It could be, could not be. Either way, he's got a lot of money behind him. Now, if you're watching this video, high chance you live in North Carolina, so you are pretty familiar with how Cooper was as a governor. We will take a quick overview of that, though. I think that's kind of important just to kind of rehash because he is running for Senate now, which is a slightly different role. However, Roy Cooper's running on Build a North Carolina that Works for Everyone. His campaign focus is that he created jobs as governor. He had bipartisan Medicaid expansion, medical debt relief. He boosted public education. He handled the opioid crisis, which that's not happening. Revitalized rural communities, and he's giving better job training. I'm not here to debate this stuff. I'm just here to give you an overview. I'm trying to be as unbiased as possible. Really, the biggest one this won't be the biggest, but this is definitely one of the biggest issues that people have with Cooper is how he handled hurricane relief, especially for Western North Carolina with Helen. And some of those main points that are really worth reconsidering, especially, a lot of stuff goes on. Maybe this isn't front of mind. But he was accused of mismanaging federal funds allocated from previous storms, including Helen. Maybe in a different video we can get into that. It is pretty wild. He also did not appoint a disaster recovery coordinator for Helen. While this storm was going on, he vetoed SB 382, which would have allocated $227 million to storm survivors. He vetoed due to provisions stripping powers of Democratic state officials. And that didn't make too many people happy. But he was also blamed for a failed response to the hurricane in time. And the hurricane did result in 103 deaths and a total of $53.6 billion in damages. During the hurricane, he deployed 1,800 National Guard, 1,500 military personnel, and he did coordinate with FEMA eventually. Another thing that he tried to do during the hurricane relief was he wanted to raise unemployment during that time to $600 a week, and that was blocked. And that was just a kind of a quick overview of some of the key points about his response to Helen. This is Oscar here. He helps out with research and whatnot. Now, as Roy was governor in 2016 and 2020, there's a lot that he did. Some people will see some of this as good. Some of it, they'll see it as bad. Either way, we're going to cover some of this stuff. First, I'll just kind of start out with some of the stuff that he vetoed. Again, this is important to review. He did veto the school choice bill. He vetoed HB 808, which restricted access to gender-affirming care, which means he supported that. He vetoed the Fairness in Women's Sports Act, which means he was okay with men playing in women's sports. He vetoed SB 49, which prohibited instruction about gender identity and sexuality in K through fourth grade. repealed HB 2, which restricted trans from using bathrooms of their identity, and he also vetoed the ICE cooperation bill, which was HB 370, and he also vetoed the 12-week abortion ban. Those were just some vetoes that he did over his time as governor. Also something to just kind of keep in mind, just giving you the full story here. His focus was more on the DEI side of things. He did give $40 million in grants to minorities and women-owned businesses. He doubled hub certifications, and his Andrea Harris task force was mainly focused on equity. Some good that he did do was he did expand Medicaid, and he raised the average teacher pay by 19%, which some sources say is still below the national average. It says that he connected 139,000 to broadband, though rural area gaps still do remain. So that kind of ties back into the revitalization of rural communities. That's still kind of lacking. When it comes to business, the big key points here is he opposed a 0% corporate tax rate. He did add 640,000 jobs, and the GSP rose by 30.9%. However, most of that does stem from GOP-led policies. Just something to keep in mind. He's also does push the clean energy thing. Executive Order 80, that was his commitment to addressing climate change and transition to clean energy. And he vowed to make North Carolina carbon zero by 2050. And he does kind of run some, doesn't run them personally, but he was advocating for some offshore wind projects as well. But that's just an overview on Cooper here. Now we're going to move on to Whatley, Mike Whatley. Mike is running as a Republican. He does have the endorsement of Trump, the full endorsement, I should say. And really with Whatley, what you have here is a guy who, much like Cooper, has been involved in D.C. much of his life. Excuse me. However, Whatley has been kind of behind the scenes, but we will cover him. Let's see, where do we want to go with this first? We'll go back to 2005. So he was with a group called the Patriot Group in 2005. They were an energy lobby. And then in 2007, he made partner at a lobby firm called HBW Resources. And we'll kind of get into we will get into them a little bit, but this is not about HBW. Excuse me on that. But mainly Whatley has been a big oil, big energy lobbyist, and really just been big energy the whole time he's been in Washington. We'll go back to the beginning here. So he did lose to Cooper in a gubernatorial race. In 2008 to 2019, he was the executive vice president for Consumer Energy Alliance. Again, whole other thing on that. Under Bush, he was a deputy assistant secretary in the Department of Energy. This was in the 2000s. 2004 to 2007, he was the chief of staff to then Senator Elizabeth Dole. 2019 and 2024, he served as the chair of the Republican Party, and in 2004, he served as the RNC's general counsel. From March 2024 on, he served as the 66th chairman of the RNC. And so what you can get from this is that he really has been inside Washington for a long time. He does say he lives in North Carolina. However, his LinkedIn does have him listed as Washington, D.C., so take that for whatever. Some stances that he has. He does oppose IVF access. However, he has not made a public stance on minors accessing puberty blockers or gender-affirming surgeries. So you've got Cooper, who is for that. Whatley has no stance on that. If I had to think of a controversy for Whatley, it would really be this supporting Robinson after the 2024 scandal and failing to condemn what the ADL says was a neo-Nazi in Joseph Gibson III. Another thing to keep in mind with Whatley is he's kind of been involved in election integrity for a long time. In 2000, he was a member of George Bush's team to pursue the Florida recount against Gore. In 2020, he participated in the Georgia phone call to recount votes. Sources state he worked closely with Trump to overturn the results. He also led the NCGOP's Election Integrity Committee, publicly said election was stolen. According to the Carolina Journal, he stated the election in 2020 was clean, however. So his not-so-public stances don't really mirror his very outwardly public stances. And he does not have a website for his election right now. It's only to collect donations. Something else just to kind of keep in mind, and again, this is not a focus on his lobbying work, but he did represent BP for quite a few years. He did represent them during the Deepwater Horizon fiasco, we'll say. That created $70 billion in damages, killed 11. He's lobbied for others like ExxonMobil, Chevron, again, big energy. And something that directly affected us here in the Carolinas was the Mountain Valley Pipeline. That was to go through West Virginia, Virginia, and North Carolina. That was said to lack transparency. And many sources said that that was operated and handled in a manner that benefited big oil only. So again, you know, I'm not telling anybody how to think, but deep insider. But that's an overview of Mike Whatley. Again, no website for him. But I'll get those up here at the end. The websites that I can find. Last right now, who's basically any kind of somewhat major name in this race right now, is Brown, who is endorsed by Mike Flynn. That was as of yesterday, I believe. Brown's not as known, okay, as the others, and that's something that the GOP here in North Carolina, I feel like, is still going to have to battle with. Again, Cooper came in 24 hours, raises over $3 million. The money isn't quite like that on the Republican side. We had a really good candidate and Andy Nielsen pull out of the race the other week. And I feel like, honestly, man, he's about the best guy for the job. But the reason he pulled out was really lack of monetary support. So, this is going to be an intense race, and it's going to require a lot of money, unfortunately. A lot of key sources state that this race could take upwards of $800 million, which is pretty wild. But let's cover Don Brown real quick. Again, Republican, endorsed by Mike Flynn. He is a former naval JAG officer, attorney as well. And fun little fact, he is a member of the St. John Order of Knights of the Hospital of St. John of Jerusalem, also known as the Hospitallers. He is endorsed by Mark Robinson, which, again, Brown and Whatley both are tied to Robinson, be that what it may. Brown has a little bit more of a hard-nosed stance on some stuff that Whatley isn't really taking any stances on. He disavows woke policies in military and schools. He cites diversity training and critical race theory and more are problems in schools and military. On tariffs, he endorses the Trump tariff, stating it protects North Carolina jobs. 64% of North Carolinians say tariffs increase their prices. Just putting that out there. Election integrity, he teamed with Sidney Powell, Mark Martin, and Kurt Olson, who is Kerry Lake's attorney, challenging the 2020 election results. So he, as with Whatley, were behind Trump during 2020 there. In 2020, he also wrote a book, did Brown, titled Call Sign Extortion 17. And this is a book detailing the team efforts that they had there in their securing the election. Some more background on Brown here. Again, attorney, he represented January 6ers, stating it was a Democratic scheme carried out by the FBI. That's according to federal court filings. He represented 78 Americans from 2001 to 2022 in a federal lawsuit against Biden's vaccine mandates. That was seen in the Fourth Circuit Court of Appeals until the policy was rescinded. He also represented Army Lieutenant Clint Lawrence, who was convicted in 2013 of the war crime of ordering fire on Afghan civilians. Alleged Army prosecutors withheld biometric data proving the civilians were Taliban bomb makers. So he's been involved deeply with military for quite a while, serving in the Navy, and then an attorney representing military clients as well. Now, Brown does have a website. On his website, he has some election policies, and I'll read those to you. Constitutional protection for the unborn. No state or the United States government shall deprive a person of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. He is a supporter of the national constitutional carry. He says Second Amendment rights to bear arms without restriction. Deep State Reduction Act. Cut 2/3 non-military personnel and apply savings to the national debt. Cut 2/3 of federal agencies and by law prohibit Congress from passing any budget or continuing resolution where spending exceeds revenues. Mandate that spending must be lower than revenues by 10%. Apply saved money to the national debt. Any member of Congress voting for a budget or CR where spending exceeds revenue would have pay suspended by operation of law until spending drops to 10% below revenue. He's also a supporter of the Vax and Mask Freedom Protection Act. He is for the Department of Education Elimination Act, Internal Revenue Service and Federal Income Tax Elimination Act. Eliminate the IRS, eliminate the federal income tax, and go to a fair tax system. Judicial Separation of Powers Act. Judges, he says, have no authority or injunction power in deciding outcomes in areas of immigration and the U.S. military. He also has the Small Business Pandemic Protection Act. You can read more about that on his website. And he wants to impose term limits on members of Congress. And those are his key election policies listed on his website. Now, again, if you got this far in the video, thank you for watching the video. Definitely drop a comment, like, subscribe. Are you pulling for anybody right now? What is your opinion on the candidates right now? Were there any candidates who were in the race who are not in the race now that you wish still were? And what do you want to see out of your Senate candidate? Again, thank you for watching the video. If you got this far, I'm Brandon. This is North Carolina First, and we'll see where this goes. But thank you, and have a good evening.